Hello and welcome back to Room for TCG. My name is Joe. Drink of the day is a nice glass of milk. And it's finally time. I finally had enough time to get sort of a grips on where I think this meta is at least starting at. Of course, this is just going to be initial thoughts as we progress over the next couple of months. We don't have the luxury of Japan having tested for months and months this time. So I think people will discover new things. New decks will arise to sort of take on the top dogs. And that's pretty exciting, and we're going to get more and more of that as we look towards future sets when we're on full global parity. We've also got those starter decks coming out in around 2 months, or a month and a half at this point. Time flies. So that's going to shake up the meta as well, I imagine. But I figured I'd get this out. This is my initial thoughts on release day, in fact. What a treat. But first, I need to let you know that this weekend, on June 14th, Sleeve Sheaf are having a restock of their popular Chicken Nugget deck box. I know a number of people missed out on the first drop, so if you do want to catch this restock, make sure you're on their website 8 PM Central European time for a restock of this spicy deck box. And if you do purchase anything from the website, please do use code MARINE for 5% off. Thank you to Sleeve Sheaf for sponsoring this video. In terms of the tiers, GOATs are the decks that you expect to be topping regionals regularly. They may not win all the time, but you expect them to win a good amount of the time. And you expect all of these to be in the top cuts for most events. Great decks are decks that I think will top regionals. They may just not do it as consistently or win them, like the decks in the top tier. Solider decks I think absolutely can at the hands of a specialist top a regional. But either I just haven't seen enough from them yet, which could just be a failing on my part, or there's sort of an issue with the deck that might cause it to be a little bit weaker. Rogue are decks that you may see top of regionals, but you're more likely to see just doing pretty well in online tournaments, or, you know, at your locals. Local Legend is the tier where I probably wouldn't take these decks to a regional. These decks are fine, and you may well see someone get a result at some point, but these decks feel a good bit weaker than the top tiers. And finally, the starter deck waiting room, because we do have those starter decks. So some leaders, I think, are fine, but if they have a starter deck, I'll just put them in here, because who knows how good they'll be in a couple of months. And I do want to start with the two big dogs of the previous set, Enel and Nami. I think these are both still top tier. We'll get on to Blackbeard soon. Actually, I'll place him in now as well. I'm going to put all three of these in top tier. Blackbeard is a tough matchup for both Enel and Nami, or at least it can be. For what it's worth, I don't think Enel has a bad matchup into Blackbeard as sort of stats might say. The amount of power reduction Enel's able to put out is really good, and if you're able to consistently remove Blackbeard's stuff, I don't think that matchup's as bad as some people might think. However, it is, I think, probably still at least unfavoured. And Blackbeard now having two other really good decks that he sort of has to either outskill or dodge a little bit is a mark against the deck. However, you have great matchups into a bunch of the other new contenders. Green Blue Luffy is a brilliant matchup for Enel. Elforge removes pretty much everything they play, which is mad. Or at least all their little weenie guys. And Mama Ragen can help you deal with some of the more mid-range stuff. Yamato is another brilliant matchup for Enel. You just remove the 8 cost with the on-KO and then remove the 6 cost it summons. It's really not that hard to pull off. You might not have it every time, and, you know, that matchup is losable. No matchup's 100-0. But I think Enel has good matchups into most of the other new decks, other than Blackbeard. I think Blackbeard is the toughest one for him to deal with of the top contenders. Now, Nami I think is in a similar position to where it was last set. Blackbeard is a difficult matchup and probably a top tier. And you also have some slightly dodgy matchups into things like Ace and Lucy, which I think still will be good decks. But beating Enel and beating a bunch of the new decks as well, I think your Yamato matchup is really good for Nami. I think your Green Blue Luffy matchup is good for Nami. Rosnante, in my opinion, is still a little bit mixed. I think both decks can tech into each other a little bit. And I've seen some people saying that this matchup is very Nami favoured. I've seen some people saying this matchup is very, very Rosnante favoured. So I don't quite have enough experience with that matchup to say conclusively. But if people are sort of saying either way, I would hedge my bets on that it's probably pretty close. It's certainly winnable for both sides. So personally, I'd probably put them like this, and the reason I'd have Blackbeard above Nami but below Enel is because he has a good matchup into these two other top decks, but I think some of the rogue stuff can be a lot more difficult for Blackbeard. Specifically, Yamato and Green Blue Luffy are tough matchups. I think Rosinante is close and winnable for both sides, but Green Blue Luffy and Yamato are both reasonably difficult just because they're quite so aggressive. I think if more people go back to the Silent One Wolf builds as opposed to the Jesus Burgess focused ones, at least Green Blue Luffy can become a lot more reasonable. And I don't think Yamato is an auto-lose, but they're going to be two popular decks that you're sort of at least a little bit unfavored into. We'll talk about the other new leaders first, and I think Green Blue Luffy is going to be a great deck. The amount of draw you have with this deck and the amount of aggression is brilliant. You have also some really nice green stun options, both that new Boa, but also I Know You're Strong and Luna, I think can still get a lot of value in this set. Obviously into Enel, it's a tricky matchup, but again, I Know You're Strong and Luna can really help into that deck, especially if they end up maybe cutting copies of Varie, because the other green decks I don't think are going to be as popular. Red Green Luffy is a massive loser from this set, and I think Mihawk is probably worse this set than he was last set too. So I do think you can maybe catch some Enels off guard with some of those stun events, and the amount of card draw and aggression you have just can't be understated. It's really, really good. However, as I mentioned before, I do think he has a little bit of a rough time into both Enel and Nami. Enel just being able to remove his board before it gets to swing, and Nami just being a 7k leader, it's not unwinnable. The Mr. 2 is actually quite good in this matchup because he copies the power of their leader. So as long as you swing with something else first, the Mr. 2 always gets a meaningful swing into Nami, which is great. And the Buggy and the Prisoner are only one don off, so I don't think this Nami matchup is as bad as some people might think, but I think it is still unfavored for Green Blue Luffy. It's probably like a, I don't know, maybe a 45-55 or a 40-60. I think it is definitely Nami favored, but I don't think it's that bad for him. And I think this deck has a lot of potential as we look into the new set. An Impel Down leader that I don't think has as much potential is Buggy. I'm unsure whether to put him in Solid or Rogue. I think I'll put him in Solid. I think the deck is decent. It can sometimes be a little clunky in that you don't actually have searchers. We have a lot of draw, but we don't actually have searchers. So sometimes you can whiff plays on curve. And also, there are the odd situations where you whiff a Prisoner, which sucks. But the thing that's the most awkward for this deck for me is playing on curve and playing your important cards whilst always having that Don in your leader. Sometimes you just don't have quite enough Don, it feels like, to get max value out of all your cards. Which can be, I don't know, it can be a little awkward sometimes, but I do think the strength of this deck in being able to go wide super fast and maintain board, even through decks that might like to either clear your board or play removal cards, is very, very good for this deck. It is a bit of a Luna victim, but thankfully there is not too much Luna in the format right now. Other new decks, I think Sengoku, I'm going to put it at the bottom of Solid. I think Sengoku is better than some people are giving it credit for. That combo's gnarly, man. Getting out 3 8Ks, including, we know how good that Sakazuki is in Rosie, who we'll come to later as one of the better decks, the better purple Navy leader. But I think Sengoku's no joke, man. The Kuzan and the Borsalino are also just really good. Being able to deny massive Blackbeard and Whitebeard blockers with Kuzan, and Borsalino getting constant value. This deck is not bad. Some people, I think, underrate this deck a little bit at the minute. And I think he'll top like 1 or 2 regionals. He's not going to be a top contender. The Enel matchup in specific is pretty poor. And Green Blue Luffy is very difficult as well, just because of how aggressive they can be. But I think into a lot of the other top decks, you're actually not that bad. The power level's there. Obviously, if you whiff your combo, you just instantly die, but you really shouldn't whiff the combo with how much consistency this deck has. I think for me, it is just like, it's good, but it's not incredible, even once you get your combo off. Final 2 new decks, Red Ace and Black Yamato. Red Ace, I'm going to put in Rogue. I don't think he's that much worse than like Sengoku, but I think this deck is going to really struggle from card draw and decks that can sort of deal with that 4-cost Luffy when he's on the board. Because without that 4-cost Luffy, you have so little defense, man. If you can't become a 7k on defense, you're just going to get run down by everything. However, I do think the cards he has and the rush options are really strong. The Marco being unremovable, making everything unremovable is great. And the new Whitebeard combos quite nicely with the starter deck Whitebeard. There's really cool combos here. And I think if this deck had just a smidge of card draw, Bandai, give red just a smidge of card draw, I think we'd be talking about a completely different deck. But it really does feel like you can run out of cards pretty easily. And you need that Luffy on the board, and you really do kind of need that ace on the board as well to help with the amount of sort of bricks and big 1Ks that you play in those 8k units. I think the deck is being overlooked a little bit. I definitely wouldn't put him in locals tier, but I don't think the deck is super good right now. Sad day for red players. Hopefully that starter deck helped Luffy, but I'm not holding my breath. Final new lead is Yamato. This is probably the one where I differ from a lot of people the most. I know a lot of people think this deck is better than I do. I'm unsure whether to put it behind or above Buggy. I think I'm above Buggy. The deck's good. I don't like at all the fact that you whiff 6-cost Yamato on 6, you just instantly lose. I don't like that. I don't like the Enel matchup. I don't like the Nami matchup. But I do like the combo potential and the amount of aggression you can put out. And the fact that your bodies are relatively hard for decks that aren't called Enel to deal with. And having unblockable is also a really nice trait. You do have a decent amount of card draw with this deck. That's great. Kinemon replaces himself. The 8-cost summon Yamato gets you back a card in hand whilst playing out more dudes. And the Momo as well goes really, really efficiently. I think this deck has some potential, and I expect we will see this deck top a regional. But I think this is going to be one of those decks that is massively overrepresented because people love the character and really enjoy the deck. But I don't think the results are going to be there. But I could be wrong on that. If you're a Yamato main, prove me wrong. Go win your local regional. And I look forward to see what innovations people have for this deck as well, because I don't see much. But maybe I'm just missing something. We do have one more new deck. Red, Green, Ace, and Luffy. This is the deck I've seen the least from. I saw it won a Chinoise Cup recently, which means it must be at least solid. I don't know how high to put this. I haven't actually tried this deck before. This is the only new leader that I've not tried yet. So I don't feel super qualified to place this one. Based off the fact that it won a Chinoise Cup, I'm going to put it at the top of solid. I think, again, this deck is a massive Luna victim. And there are only so many cards you can play in this deck. Given that you can only play 6,000 power or less dudes, I'm imagining the Nami matchup might be difficult. And I'm also imagining the Enel matchup is probably bad. Because you're playing sort of 1 to 2 cards a turn. I have played actually... I think I played like 3 games with this on the dev sim a while back. And I felt like you were playing like 1 to 2 guys a turn, which is prime position to just get Enelled out of the game. But I don't know. I think this deck has potential. I just haven't seen enough of it yet. Enough from it yet to put it any higher, really, or lower than this. Shout out to whoever it was that won the Chinoise Cup. I cannot remember now. Anyway, that's it for the new decks. I guess we'll just go through the rest of these in order. Hannibal, I'm going to put in local legends. This is just acknowledgement that he got a bunch of new cards in this set. All the new blue Impel Down stuff, I think is actually pretty cool for him. The Mr. 2, the Mr. 1, the Buggy, the Prisoner. There's a lot of different options, and I want to put out a video on this guy soon. I want to give him a go. And there's also the Kaido Linlin build with the new Magellan. I think you can play the Magellan in the other build for what it's worth, but Kaido Linlin blowing up the Magellan, very, very funny. Does absolutely nothing into Enel, and activating a million on KOs into Nami is probably not the best idea. But I think this deck got a little bit of sauce now. I wouldn't be surprised to see people topping their locals with Hannibal. Now, although I would be surprised if this tops a regional. Unless people are just sleeping on this guy. If you're a Hannibal main, let me know. Look at that belly. Man, I used to have the gold leader of this guy. I sold that for way too little. What a time to be alive. Green, purple Luffy. Green, purple Luffy is just an Enel victim. That matchup's terrible. I think the other matchup should be pretty good. I can see how this deck would have a pretty good matchup into Teach, just because you're really aggressive. And the Nami matchup, I don't know if I'd say it's favored, but it's certainly winnable. I'd put him in Rogue. I'll put him above Ace. I'm unsure how this does into the new decks. I've not tested Green Purple Luffy too much myself. And I've not really seen anybody playing it online. But I imagine it's still pretty good. And I'd imagine that Blackbeard matchup is probably one of your better ones. Red Blue VV is, it's again another, there's a lot of decks that are just Enel victims. Like, they're decent, but you just can't play them because you just lose to Enel immediately. Assuming they get to do what they want. And from experience, the Nami matchup has also been reasonably tough for VV. I think your Blackbeard matchup should be pretty good. You have a lot of removal. Blackbeard does not love removal. They have no removal protection. Although they will get some value out of nullifying your leader effect, so they can actually carry your board. So I don't know on that one, but I think VV's probably good enough at least for a Rogue. You might see one or two, you know, do something at a regional. That'd be pretty exciting. Red Yellow Bonnie, I'm going to put in local legend. I think she's a little bit worse. Blackbeard nullifying her leader effect is going to be really awkward, especially on those turns where you don't play a leader pump. But even just being at 7 and having those massive Blackbeard blockers on the board, denying the aggression from, for example, the 10-cost Luffy, is going to be a little awkward for Bonnie. Enel was already a really horrible matchup. So, for me, that's just enough. Like, if you're losing to these two, I just don't think the deck is powerful enough. It doesn't have very much card draw. It doesn't have very many options. It's very, very linear. People know exactly what you're going to do. I think this is here for me, but you could maybe put it in Rogue. Yellow and L, I'll put in Rogue. He was better last set. Blackbeard is going to be a miserable matchup because having your leader effect negated is not good. There's a lot of these decks that very heavily rely on their leader effect are going to struggle a lot more this set, just because this Blackbeard just nullifies your leader effect with a 10 cost. So like Enel won't get to heal, which is the whole deck. It's mad. You do gain the new 8 cost Blackbeard, which all of these yellow decks that we end up talking about do gain that. And I think Enel will make great use out of it because he loves his triggers. He loves a good trigger, doesn't Enel? So I wouldn't be surprised to see some people trying him. I'll put him here. Shout out Mary. Mary, prove me wrong. Win a regional with Enel. Go do it. Maybe he's slightly better than this. Because outside of the Blackbeard matchup, not too much else has changed. I imagine you're pretty reasonable into Yamato. Although maybe not, because their board's hard to deal with. Their board's pretty hard to deal with, actually. I don't know, I'm going to put him here. I haven't seen anybody playing this deck, this format. And there's usually a reason for that. Green Bonnie, I'll put in local legend. She's fine. She's always fine. This deck is perpetually fine. If you look at a green player's tier list, everything is favored. One rogue deck is unfavored. And then the mirror is in even. But Bonnie is the perpetual underperformer. People, myself included, have had high expectations for Bonnie in formats gone past recently. And she just doesn't perform. I think rotation hurt this deck a good bit as well. So losing things like 10 cost Dofi to rotation and the amount more power down there is at the minute is pretty awkward, in addition to Blackbeard just saying you don't have a leader effect. Which, the same as Enel, that's just rough to deal with. I'll put her here. Marco, I think, is just a little bit outclassed at the minute. He's probably still fine, but a lot of these red-blue leaders kind of play similarly. Ace is a bit different, but like Lucy, Vivi, and Marco are all power-based removal decks to an extent. So I'm not sure where this guy actually fits in. The new Whitebeard Pirates cards are interesting. Being able to use Moby Dick is very nice for your consistency as Marco. And being able to give that Don for your leader effect on a future turn is also really good. And I think the new Newgate can combo really nicely with the Starlight Newgate for this deck. Can remove just like anything with that combo, which is mad. But I just don't see a real reason to play this over playing Lucy or Ace. I think both of these are just better red-blue decks. I know some people will play this and will experiment with it. In fact, I might put him in local legend because I haven't seen any results yet. At least for Vivi, we've seen her do pretty well recently. For Marco, I'll put him down here because I don't know if anyone will take the time to actually build this and sort of perfect the build. Now, next up, the big dog, Shanks. Where are we going to put Shanks? Goat? Shanks tier 0? No, I don't think so. I think I'll put him in solid. I think you'll match up into all three of the... certainly into Enel and Nami. I think it's slightly Enel and Nami favoured. I know some people might disagree with me on the Nami thing, but I think a good Nami player will be able to put down those bodies that are a lot harder for you to remove. The Robins are really annoying because you just can't really deal with them. Shanks, he hates having life burned. And Nami also has great ways to get around your blockers late game, things like Zeus or Raging Tiger if they start teching that. If they just start playing Whitebeards and you can just go Bomb Shanks, then yeah, you're going to have a great time. But if they play more of those bodies that get them immediate value, that's when this matchup gets a lot more difficult. But all of these matchups are winnable. Like, Nami is absolutely winnable. If you see enough stuff to get rid of their dudes, or just ignore it and keep pumping your leader to 7, you can absolutely beat Nami. Don't get me wrong. This isn't like a super unfavored matchup. I'd say probably like between 50-50 and 55-45. And I think the same for Enel. Enel is very much how much do they draw. If they draw enough to remove every single character you play, you will lose. You just will lose. But if they start whiffing a KO at some point, that's when you can get back into the game. Once you've got a couple guys hanging around, and maybe it's even possible to starve Enel. Try and just hope they whiff a little bit. I haven't tested that yet. Typically, Shanks isn't a deck that can starve because you can't heal consistently. But, I don't know, maybe there's something there. Either way, I think if Enel sees his removal, you are cooked. But if they don't see enough Gamma Knives, if they don't see enough Divine Departures, you've got a real chance. I believe SimStats say that Blackbeard is actually a unfavored matchup, but it hasn't been my experience. Yeah, they say it's an unfavored matchup into Blackbeard. I don't agree with that. I think this matchup is favored for Shanks. I think this is the deck of the top 3 that you want to see. 6-cost Law puts in a lot of work. Bottom Shanks puts in a lot of work. Of course, they can heal forever. And the Burgess is reasonably annoying, but we have ways to get rid of that with things like Ben Beckman if they can't pump it enough by your 7th on turn. And I really do just think that 6-cost Law is incredible into this deck. And we're not that weak to any of their little weenies like Vasco Shot or Van Olga. So for me, this matchup I think is actually favoured for Shanks. Blackbeard players, yell at me in the comments, but I can't really put Shanks any higher because I don't have any confidence really in these other two matchups. I think they're both unfavoured, and it's not like Shanks has good matchups into everything else as well. Like, some of the other new decks can be difficult to deal with. Primarily Rosnante, which is not a new deck, but he can be pretty difficult just because how aggressive that deck can be. Moving on, Lim, I don't have a lot to say. I'm just going to put Lim in local legend. You can win with this deck, but like the Nami matchup felt pretty bad last set. The Enel matchup is not good. I imagine the Blackbeard matchup might be fine because you're pretty happy going first and you can just aggro them down. But yeah, these other two matchups were just dreadful. And Lim just has... It's not like she beats everything else. The deck just isn't... It's just kind of old, right? The deck's just kind of old. We need new Odyssey cards. Maybe we don't. Blackbeard, I'll put him Rogue. I'll put him below these guys. People love this deck. People love playing this deck. I don't get why. I think it's the most boring deck ever printed. It's so boring to face. You just don't do anything. But I think he has enough answers now that the deck is not super amazing. You probably have a decent matchup in Black-Yellow Blackbeard for what it's worth, which is quite amusing. But I think the deck overall just, I don't know, it's not it for me. I think if this deck was better, you'd see him doing well. And whilst I don't have a lot of experience playing the deck, whenever I play into it on the sim, I know sim, but whenever I play into this deck, whatever I'm playing, I just seem to beat it nowadays. and that's not a good sign. UP Luffy, I'm also going to put in Rogue. This deck was terrible last set, and your Nell matchup is still reasonably tough. However, that new Mr. 3 gives you a bit more of a chance, right? Being able to stun their NLs in the early game whilst drawing more cards, it just gets you into that late game more reliably. And once you start getting into that late game, that's when this deck comes into its own. It's just a little weak to getting aggro down. So I think the Mr. 3 is really going to help. And I have seen someone already won a store battle out in Japan. Only a 5-round store battle, but that's not nothing. I think he's deserving of at least Rogue. I hope we see this deck come back. I know a lot of people hate this deck with a passion, which is crazy to me. In his day, this deck was tilting, but like nowadays, really, who's getting tilted over UP Luffy now? I don't know, not me, that's for sure. Kobe can go in local legend. This is a Cope deck. The Enel matchup is playable. The Nami matchup is absolutely unplayable. 90-10, 80-20 at best. Like, the matchup is absolutely dreadful. And I say this is a resident Kobe enjoyer. The Blackbeard matchup, I haven't played Kobe this format. Nobody is playing Kobe this format. But I imagine the Blackbeard matchup probably isn't too bad. It's probably somewhat playable. But I don't think it's going to be good. And that on top of the Enel matchup isn't... I don't think it's Kobe favored either. I think it's Enel favored into good Enel players. But it's certainly more playable than Nami. Anyway, will they print more Kobe cards? They've printed this guy so many cards. I think the deck is just fundamentally flawed in that a deck that only attacks board. I don't know. I think that is just fundamentally flawed. This guy is really good at clearing board up until the point when either the board is enormous and just too hard to deal with without crazy power, without like seeing every doll in the deck. Or they have disgusting on-KOs that say you lose the game immediately. Like, you can't take out the 5-cost Nami in this deck. You can't take out... Super can't take out the Robin. Because we can't heal. So, I don't know. I don't think... I think Kobe is... This might be his last time on the tier list. I don't know if I'll include him going forwards, but we'll see. You have nice matchup into the new aggro decks, though, for what it's worth. Like, Green Blue Luffy. If you're not beating that every day of the week, then the deck's cooked. The deck is cooked. Green Zoro I'd actually put in Rogue, but I'm going to put him in the staff deck waiting room. I think this deck is not that bad. It's just old. It's missing some new stuff. The Chishigi's still great. Law's still pretty good. Cavendish is fine. But yeah, we need some new cards for this deck. And judging by the 2 commons that have been revealed already, they don't seem that good. They seem fine. What I have more hope for is Kuzan, who is also in the staff deck waiting room. I think that Smoker is actually really good. That 2-cost Smoker that got revealed. That's going to help you a lot into Blackbeard, a lot into Enel, and a lot into Green Blue Luffy, which are, again, I think are some of the better decks this format. So I'd not be surprised to see Kuzan maybe be a real threat once that starter deck comes out. Your Enel matchup already wasn't that bad. Like, it wasn't good, but it wasn't that bad. And I would say this a similar thing for Nami. Ice Time gets so much value, man. That card's mad. And that E-Show for the hand rip as well. It's like the only good hand rip in the game. It's like 4-cost Law. 4-cost Law is probably the second best. But that E-Show just doesn't have a good home right now because Kuzan's a bit mid. He's just a bit mid. For what it's worth, if I had to place him on the tier list, I'd probably also put him in Rogue. But I'm going to put him in the waiting room for now. Rayleigh is fine. It's really fine. I don't see a reason to play this, to be honest. Just play Green Blue Luffy. They are both low to the ground aggro decks with a fair amount of card efficiency. I think Luffy has just a better closer with that kill combo, with the let's go to the Navy headquarters. That's an insane kill turn. Whereas Rayleigh doesn't really have that. He has to sort of be more fair. This deck definitely has more defense, I would say, than Luffy though, in the amount of 2Ks that it gets to play. Luffy, much less 2Ks, but I think more aggression. And for these aggro decks, I think right now you just need a lot of aggression. So I'd probably just play this over Rayleigh if you want to play a low to the ground aggro deck. Sanji, I've not played. I've watched a couple games from Nightingale TCG. I know he loves this deck and thinks it might be pretty decent with the new Galdino and the new Sakazuki, both great additions to this deck. For now, I'm gonna put him in Rogue. I'll put him at top. Put him here. Let's put him here. I think this deck has some nice traits. Being able to use Raging Tiger efficiently could be nice for dealing with Rosinante. I'm realizing we still haven't talked about. He's next though. What a treat. And the new Galdino being able to stun your opponent whilst you build up your Sanjis is pretty cool. The Sakazuki as well can help you try and deal with Enel. And this deck has also gained Mamaragan recently because you can play at a low Don count. Having that as both the rest option and just a free counter, pretty good. I think this deck's still suffering from the loss of Red Rock, not being able to efficiently or as efficiently deal with big units can be a bit of an issue. However, now that you have the Sakazuki Mamaragan combo, I think you could even play Gum Gum Lightning maybe in this deck. Maybe try that one out. I think having that as well as Sakazuki can give you an answer to those big dudes, which should give Sanji a bit more potential in this format, which is cool. Now, Rosante I actually want to put in top tier. I think I want to put him here. I think this deck's really good. And it's also really versatile. You can do a lot of different things with this deck. You've got healing, you've got power down with the Sakazuki, you've got all the laws that just get insane value. The Rosinante law especially. Being able to draw a card, ramp a Don, and play a 6/8 for 4 Don is mental. And the new Navy package giving you searchable access to Borsellino, whilst giving you a free cycle every turn with Marineford. Now we've got that as well. This deck has I'm not highlighting the leader. This deck has the makings of a really, really promising deck in this format. You're really aggressive, but you have a ton of card draw, and you also have a ton of life gain. So you don't, if it's a matchup where the aggression isn't going to be enough and you need to play a longer game, you can. If you need to be aggressive and just try and beat your opponent down, you can. If you need to play power down removal man, you can. You can play Saka Gum Gum Lightning, Saka Mamaragan. I think this deck kind of just does a lot through being purple-yellow and having a ton of really good Navy cards. There's actually a surprisingly surprisingly small amount of laws in this deck now, which is crazy. Although we did gain that new Spoon law. The 4 cost that can ramp 1 as active and become a 6k when you attack with it. The main question mark for me for this deck is Enel. I think Enel is a dodgy matchup. Again, I talked about the Nami matchup earlier. I think some people think it's one way, some people think it's the other. I would be inclined to say it's fairly close. But the Enel matchup is not good. The power down and your leader effect is really good at defending your dudes once per turn. But when they reduce your Rosie Law to 3k and then rest it and then start attacking it with Ohms and Shuras, the lead effect's not so good then, and if you can't build a board, you're not going to kill Enel. I've seen Rosie players, I think, are starting to starve Enel, which is interesting, and maybe that will work out better for them. But from what I've seen so far, this is a tough matchup for the deck. However, you have very reasonable matchups into, like, Teach, I think, is favoured for Rosie. Nami matchup's close, and into a lot of the other decks, you're just either slightly favoured, or it's like 50-50. And I think the skill of a skilled Rosie, the skill of a skilled Rosie pilot, I think will carry this a long way. There's a lot of top players that really enjoy this deck, and I'm really excited to hopefully see him get some major wins in this format. He did like pretty good at the Luca regionals in OP16 already, and this new Navy build is really exciting, I think. Red-Green Luffy is a major loser from this format. I'm going to put him at the bottom of solid. You're already like a bit dodgy into Enel and a bit dodgy into Ace. Now you have Blackbeard, which is a horrific matchup. You have to aggro the hell out of them, hope they kind of whiff something, and hope that you draw like a god, because once they get to 10 Don, you are dying very quickly, because they will just play that 10 cost Blackbeard and negate your leader effect, and then your whole deck doesn't do anything, which is tough. Yeah, I think this matchup sucks for Red-Green Luffy big time, so I would be surprised to see Red-Green Luffy really do very much of anything this format. Some people will still play it, and I'm sure he will still He'll probably still top an event, but you've really got to dodge Blackbeard. In addition to some of the other matchups that were already difficult for this deck. So I do think he is a major loser. And also gained very little. There's definitely still something to be said for, like, you can play Luna, and Luna is very good. Luna is great into Rosie. Luna is great into Enel. But, yeah, I think the Blackbeard matchup is going to push this guy down a tier, for sure. Ace, I think, is great. I'm still unsure which of the new Whitebeard cards actually worth playing. Moby Dick feels like a shoo-in at least a couple copies. Being able to give you an extra Don on turns where that really matters to have your leader effect online seems really important. And again, being able to just search everything, again, feels really nice for being able to search things like Yamato. As for the other Whitebeard cards, the Secret Rare Ace, the big Nugate, and maybe one or two of the other ones, maybe the Marco. I think they're... I'm undecided on how good they are just yet. I've not played into many aces, and the ones I have played into have been playing a variety of different builds. So that's pretty exciting, if anything. The biggest problem matchup this deck has now is Blackbeard. Your Nami matchup is good, your Enel matchup is playable, although I would definitely say favoured for Enel. But your Blackbeard matchup is bad. Not having either portion your leader effect, so you don't get the draw and you don't get the free 2k, it can sort of expose how many bricks this deck actually plays in the late game. And also Blackbeard just healing forever is not something Ace loves. The triggers are also really good. Vasco's shot is great for dealing with everything that's not named like Nugate or Zoro. And that wall of Blackbeards can be frustrating. I think if this deck's going to beat this matchup, it needs to get a clutch Roger play off. And even that can just be thwarted if they get a random ACOS Blackbeard trigger. You can just lose on the spot, which is not ideal. But yeah, between the redirects, all the blockers, and then negate on your leader, as well as negating those Whitebeard blockers, I think this matchup is pretty difficult. But I do still have a lot of hope for Ace. I think those new cards give him some nice new ways to play. And the deck is still just, like, insanely good into the majority of the field. I think Roger's going to be pretty mid this set. I'm going to put him in Rogue. I'll put him about here. The deck's still fine. Big leader is fine. This deck is really boring, though. I don't think a lot of people will look to play this deck. And I think because you are 5k for a good amount of turns, I think you're going to struggle with some of the aggro that comes out of decks like Luffy and Rosie. I really do. And Enel was also already a pretty bad matchup. Just getting all your big guys removed, it's just not great. And the fact that their Enels are so big naturally and they get to play them so early, it means even once you get to 7k, like, their bodies are still relevant, that they were playing on their 5-Don turn, which is frustrating. They also get a lot of value with their weenies in the early game, chipping your hand down, because you have to try and counter some hits. Otherwise, you're going to die before you even get to 10. So, for me, I don't have a ton of hope for Roger. Your Blackbeard matchup probably shouldn't be too bad, because you obviously don't care about having your leader's effect negated. You want your leader's effect negated. And you can ramp to big guys before they can start playing out their 10 costs. So you should get to stick a couple 10 costs. I can see him doing fairly well into Blackbeard. And I can also see the Nami matchup not being too bad. But I think the Enel matchup is going to be rough. The Rosnante matchup is probably rough. Again, because of their aggression and the Saka combos. And then I think some of these more aggressive decks, like Luffy as well, and Yamato, there's a chance that you just won't get 10 Don early enough. Sabo, another Starter Deck waiting room deck. I'd put him in Rogue. I think these three decks are already pretty good. Like, they're not going to win regionals, but they're not bad. Like, these are not bad decks. If you saw someone play one of these at your locals, you wouldn't go, damn, this guy must be a noob. You'd be like, oh, this guy is messing around with some cool Rogue shit, right? So I'm really excited to see what those SRs do. And I really hope at least one of these decks becomes a top tier contender. I don't know how much hope I have, but I hope that... I don't know how much belief I have, but I hope one of them does. Emu has gained nothing. Emu was doing fine last set. I think Emu will still continue to do fine this set. The deck is still fine. It can absolutely win. It really just needs to go... You need to go second in, like, every matchup. And into some of these sort of more power... And as decks just get more powerful, and Emu doesn't, I don't really have a lot to say on this deck. I think it will still be fine in this format. I think of the new matchups, you probably should be okay into Blackbeard. Because they don't buff their leader, so you can just play out a bunch of 7Ks. Like, you don't really care that much about having your leader negated, of course. And they can negate one thing, but they can't negate everything. And you'll have a lot of aggression on the return once your elves have stuck. So I could actually see that matchup potentially being Emu favoured, although I have not tested it at all. I think Rosnante should be pretty bad. The fact that they can protect their laws with their life means that you're not going to be able to play a slow removal game. The fact that they want to go first naturally means that even when you're on your optimal curve, they're also on their optimal curve. And this deck gets to be crazy aggressive, right? And Mama Argan as well. The existence of Mama Argan heavily punishes Emu because your War and your Mars can just be rested, and then your opponent can go for lethal much easier. I think it's a fair placement for Emu in Solid. Maybe it could be up a little bit, maybe it could be down a little bit. I think we'll see at least one topper regional, but we'll see. Bonnie, I think, is Cope, although she has gained some nice new tools from the Blackbeard package. The new Acres Blackbeard combos with this beautifully. The new 3-cost Burgess as well does, in being another body that can be fairly sticky because your opponent is incentivized to not get rid of Burgess. But this deck still just has fundamentally, I think this deck is just worse than most other top yellow decks at the minute. Your leader effect is very, very mid. And the only thing you gain from being Egghead, really, is that new 9-cost Bonnie. Or not new, it's quite old at this point. But the 9-cost Bonnie is really powerful. But I don't see much reason to play this over some of the other leaders, other than you like it, you know? And that's fine. Mihawk, I'm going to put in Solid. Maybe could be at the bottom of Great. I don't know, here or here. I'm going to put him top of Solid for now. I think this deck is going to suffer a bit more than he did last format because of the increased amount of power reduction from that 7-cost Sakazuki. Both in Rosie and Anel, that is just going to make dealing with Mihawk's board much, much easier. Also, like, none of these leaders are Slash. It's other than Shanks. Fuck Shanks, I guess. It's hilarious how, like, he has a buff against the whole sort of group of leaders, and they're all sort of mid. Like, you got Buggy here, you got Shanks here, you got some of the others in the sort of the lower tiers. And if Slash leaders ever do become meta, Mihawk just gets inherently better, right? But maybe once that Zoro deck comes out, Mihawk will be the savior we needed. But for now, I think the deck's still solid. You don't really gain anything from the new set. Maybe the 7-cost Boa. You could maybe try that one. But everything else in the set doesn't really work with him. You already had a pretty bad NL matchup. I sort of don't expect the Blackbeard matchup will be great. Although DMG is pretty damn good, so who knows. Jinbei is a fine aggro deck. I'll probably put him around here. It's fine. Blue is actually pretty good into Rosie. If you can follow their curve with, like, Law into Jozu, you're going to get a lot of points in that matchup. But because of this stupid opponent's turn effect, you can't really remove anything into Teach until you get to your Jinbei. And by the time you get to your Jinbei, they're getting to their big dudes, and then they're going to start negating your Jinbeis, and you lose a lot of aggression. Anel was also relatively difficult for this deck just because you can't remove the Anels. Although this deck just has a lot of aggression, and I think Jinbei's fine. Again, if I was playing a fast aggro deck, though, I'd probably just be playing this Luffy. Although if you want an aggro deck with a bit more removal, that's where Jinbei sort of comes in. This video is already way longer than I thought it was going to be. So I'm probably going to blitz through these last few a little bit. Boa, I think, gained a few nice new cards in the new set, and I actually think she's better than some people are giving her credit for. The 2 new trigger blockers give you a lot more urgency in burning your opponent's life down, and just getting more bodies on the board quicker. The new Acos Blackbeard is also really good for this deck. Being able to stack the trigger that you need is ideal, and I do think we will see Boa do fairly well. The Nami matchup is the main one that is sort of diabolically shit. Infamously so. And I believe that the Blackbeard players are currently doing quite well into Boa by starving. But this deck's high roll is just mad, man. Like, if your opponent is a little bit inexperienced, doesn't know to starve in certain matchups, and they just start swanging and you just get trigger. Or when you're into decks that can't heal and you can just chain boas, this deck has some real crazy strength, man. Dofi, I think, is just worse Blackbeard. They have very, very similar leader effects. Blackbeard just gets a lot more value out of his because you get cycle, and you generally have better on KOs than Dofi. Dofi was sort of more doing the thing where you divert into a big dude, and then late game you can heal with baby 5. Blackbeard is more doing the thing where I divert into a dude, get a cycle, and then also get a really good on KO from like Vasco Shot or Van Orga. So I think Dofi is still fine. I'd probably put him like here. I still think the deck will do okay, but I just think you're better off playing Blackbeard in most situations. Crocodile. I think Crocodile is perpetually underrated, man. This deck's really good. I don't know, maybe I'm just overhyping Croc. And I know this deck's like relatively unpopular. I don't know why, personally. Even when his stats are doing well and you see a few in regionals, people just don't like playing this deck. I don't know. Let me know if you know why Crocodile's just quite unpopular, or maybe I'm just overrating him. But I think the on-KO of the Croc is just so good. Like, sure, Blackbeard can negate it, but if you get second, there's going to be 2 on the field potentially before they even get to play 1 Blackbeard. And then they can only negate 1. And because he's always upright anyway, it's not like they can actually deal with it. The Missile Sunday combo is also really nice, and we're getting that live action folder at some point, which has a couple cards that could be pretty interesting for this deck. Your Enel and Nami matchups are both playable, in my opinion. I think the Blackbeard matchup should be playable as well, although maybe I'm overlooking something. I haven't actually played Croc this format yet. I haven't played into any. Again, nobody plays this damn deck. But I feel like he should be at least... I feel like he should be reasonable. Maybe he's not quite great. Maybe I'll put him in solid. I think this is better, actually. Yeah, I think I like him here. I think I do. I think whilst the Enel and Nami matchups are playable, they're like 50-50 or slightly unfavoured for Croc. In the case of the Nami, I think. So... yeah, your Mr. 1's going to be pretty nice for helping you deal with the aggro decks like UG. But your Ace matchup was always shit. Your Enel matchup and Nami matchup are close. I have no idea about the Rosie matchup. My gut would say it's probably good for Rosie because they can just protect their laws anyway. And then the Sakazuki is pretty good at sort of stinting your aggression as Croc in the late game. And Mama Ragan can deal with most of your blockers. Yeah, I'm convinced. I'm going to put him down here. Maybe I'll actually put Yamato up a bit. I think this deck will do better, even though on power level, I'd probably would put it here. But I think, and I'll leave it Yamato here. But I think you will see a lot more people play this deck. And probably top regionals with it as a result, just because of the amount of players. I don't know. People just love this character and this deck for some reason. Moria is another yellow deck. I'll just put him in Rogue with an L. It's fine. If you want to play yellow, but you really want to lose to Nami, you can play Moria. You gain the Blackbeard, which is cool. You also gain the funny 6-cost Moria, which I think is bad. But, yeah, this deck's fine. It's another trigger slop yellow deck. It's not bad. I'd say it's probably better than an L. Because you don't get instantly gimped by Blackbeard. But your Nami matchup is shit. And I can see some of these other matchups being pretty tricky as well. Now Krieg. I know there's a couple of Krieg Copers out there. I don't know, man. I'm going to just leave him in Rogue. I don't know enough about this deck. I'll put him at the bottom of Rogue. I feel like this leader is always, like, okay. You see these at your locals. In fact, I'll put him in Local Legend. You see these people at your locals doing really well, but you never see Krieg do anything at a regional. So, maybe he's just a little bit of cope. I enjoy the deck. I think it is fun cope at the very least. Lucy, I think, will still be great. Your Enel matchup is still bad, but your Nami matchup is still good. And your Blackbeard matchup is also good. According to the stats, the Rosie matchup is unfavored, which is possible they're just a little bit too fast, especially if they get first. But if you're able to take first, I could see you having a slightly better matchup into Rosie than the stats might suggest. Although it's 100% true that Sakazuki's pretty annoying for you to deal with as Lucy. Reducing your Sabo and then just removing it pretty easily. Not great. This deck has so much card draw, and if people can't deal with those blockers, you get so much value out of them. And just having a decent matchup into both Blackbeard and Nami, even if these two are slightly unfavored, I think that gives him at least a good chance to do pretty well this format. People really like this deck as well. It has a lot of nice tricks that you can pull off with the Fire Fists. And now that the Barto build is more popular, I think that's good for him as well. Just having even more card draw and being less reliant on that Cavendish sort of sticking and attacking. Whereas the Barto just gets you the value immediately and is then hard to remove as well. You can defend him super easily. So I think Lucy I would leave in great. Maybe a little bit worse than last set, but still an absolute threat. Zonji, this is local legend. This is just sort of acknowledgement that he did get some interesting stuff in the new Impel Down package. Specifically the 2 costs, Mr. 1 and Mr. 2, give him like reliable draw and a way to proc your lead effect, which is pretty cool. I don't think this deck will do very much. Swinging 7k a lot of times is a good strategy, but it's not an insane strategy. Into Nami, of course, this deck kind of sucks. Into Ace, this deck really sucks. And into Enel, you're just never going to get to stick a guy, which sucks. He's got some new stuff, though, and this base art leader is, like, really fucking expensive. If you're not aware of this, check your bulk. See if you got extra copies of this, because this guy's pricey, man. Starter deck Luffy, this is 100% in the starter deck waiting room. I forgot Kada. Let's put him in here as well. What's the last one? What's the yellow leader? Kid. I forgot them all. I forgot all the shit ones. Yeah, all 3 of these decks need serious help. None of these are good. These 3, I think, are already contenders. They're decent, not good decks, but decent decks already. These 3, these are cheeks, man. This one especially. This is a diabolically shit leader. It was terrible on reveal, on launch, and it has not gotten any better. I don't know what the hell they're cooking up for this guy. The 2 cards so far have been bad. The Jinbei's like, okay, maybe, but this deck's SRs need to be wild for this to be a viable deck. This deck needs less, but it desperately, I think, needs a new 8 cost. Be it Katakuri, be it Big Mum, I don't know. This deck just needs some new powerful cards, because one of his SRs being a fucking Searcher, it just means you don't have enough power plays. You have 8 cost Kata, and that's it. That's the deck, and that's not enough anymore. And Yellow Kid, I think Yellow Kid is better than these 2. If I had to rank them in like terms of power, I'd probably go like this. I think Yellow Kid is better than these 2, but it's definitely worse than Kuzan. That Cavendish, actually pretty good. I think that Cavendish is actually pretty good for the deck. I'm excited to see what the other cards are for this one, because I think this guy has potential. Being able to activate on KOs of yellow cards, whilst having all the new yellow options in the Teach, the Borsalino, it's got to be good, right? It's got to be reasonable. Just give us some decent new cards. A new top end would be cool. A new maybe it's like a 7 cost or an 8 cost would be pretty nice. And then we've got these 2 yellow Luffys last. I don't see much reason to play this yellow Luffy. I'm just going to put him down here with these other rogue yellow options. It's just fine. You gain a couple things from being this specifically, but you just don't have a leader effect. I would just rather play Nami, Teach, Bo, Rosie. Any of these other guys. This deck's boring, man. This deck's boring. And finally, Sky Luffy. I think Sky Luffy is... I haven't seen a lot of play from Sky Luffy right now. The fall-off of Luna will probably help this deck a good bit. You're already reasonable into Enel, and not as bad as some people thought into Nami. Rosie's blockers are not as annoying for this deck because you have the Rush Luffy. and Rosie being able to sort of power down your stuff. Whilst annoying, you can at least defend it if you really want to. So that's something. I think Blackbeard turning off your leader effect might be a little bit annoying. If they end up maybe they're supposed to starve in this matchup and then play board later on. And the redirect not counting as activating a blocker for the effect of the 5-cost Luffy is really good for Blackbeard, because he can redirect that rush guy without buffing him up. And also things like Vasco Shot are going to be pretty tasty in this matchup. So I could see Blackbeard maybe being difficult for Sky Luffy to deal with. But I think all three of these other decks shouldn't be too bad. I don't know. Nami's certainly not a great matchup, but I think people over-exaggerated how bad this matchup was for Sky Luffy. I don't think it's that bad at all. Little unfavored maybe, but not crazy bad. I think Sky Luffy has potential, and I do expect we'll see him top in this format. I think that's everyone that's worth talking about. There are, of course, a lot of other decks that could go in local legend that I'm not mentioning. Robin for one can probably go in local legend. Look how big she is. They appear on the right when I hover over here. And there'll be some others in here. If you disagree with anything massively, please do let me know in the comments. I think this list is fairly reasonable. Of course, I've not had enough chance to test with all of these decks to, 100% place them. Nobody has. It's impossible. We need to see thousands and thousands of games from regionals to actually know where these decks end up settling. But at the start of the format, this is about where I'm at. This is about where I'm at. Either way, thank you for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.